Breathing is the most automatic thing you do. And yet, hidden within it lies the greatest power of transformation. In this video, you'll discover why the pause between each breath is the key to real awakening. Stay until the end to understand how stopping your breath can change everything. Breathing is not simply filling your lungs with air. When done consciously, it rips through the veil of automatism and reveals what is dormant. Inhaling with attention and exhaling with presence breaks physiological routine and activates something deeper, more visceral. There is a pause between these two movements. A moment so brief that the mind does not notice it if it is distracted. But this is where what no one talks about happens. This is where everything begins. That instant of suspension, where air neither comes in nor goes out, is forbidden territory for the ordinary mind. It is a void where time dissolves, where the body stops being mere flesh and thought loses its tyranny. There, in that infinitesimal space, a dissolution of the self occurs. It is not a concept, not a metaphor, it is an experience. It is the moment when the body falls silent, the mind shuts down, and something unknown takes control. It is not about breathing harder or faster, it is about stopping breathing for a second and inhabiting that silence. For millennia, the most ancient traditions knew this. Whether in Vedic temples, Himalayan caves, Tibetan monks' fire rituals, or the dark chants of Western mystics, they all agreed on one thing. The power is not in inhalation, nor in exhalation. It is in the moment when the air stops, in that pause, in that tiny death where the ego loses control and consciousness expands. The body enters a state of stillness that is not death, but not life as we know it either. It is an edge, a crack between worlds. Energy no longer flows. As usual, it condenses, purifies. The nervous system disconnects from external noise. Stress dissolves. Anxiety disappears. Because in that pause, there is nothing to fear, nothing to do, only to remain. And that, in a society that forces you to move, produce, and perform, is an act of absolute rebellion. Breathing this way is not a trick. It is a return to what was always there, pure consciousness. It is looking inward without intermediaries. It is ripping power away from the system and returning it to yourself. The cultures that understood this power did not need theories to justify it. They experienced it. The yogis of pranayama spoke of kumbhaka, the voluntary retention of breath not as a wellness technique, but as a path to disappearance, to merge with what lies beyond the body. There were two ways to do it, one after inhalation, holding the air inside and feeling how energy distributes itself like subtle fire, the other after exhalation, when nothing remains, only emptiness, and that emptiness becomes the most fertile space of all. There, the ego cannot survive. It has no air, no stimulus. It is a death without a corpse. And it is this symbolic death, repeated over and over, that allows the body to remember that it is not the center, that it can function from another place, that it can exist without chasing every impulse. The pause teaches what productivity denies, that doing nothing is essential. That silence, when sustained, reveals. Modern research is only beginning to touch this wisdom. Neuroscience has discovered that when breathing slows and becomes conscious, brain waves shift into a different frequency, more coherent, more serene. The parasympathetic system takes control. The amygdala quiets. The body, programmed to flee, begins to stay, to listen, to release the panic that governs it. Not because someone says so, but because that is how it is designed. Eastern warriors knew this as well. Samurai practiced it before entering battle. The pause, just before action, sharpened their senses, anchored them in the present without fear. It was not only physical preparation, it was soul training, focus, connection with the dimension where there are no distractions, no doubts, no thoughts. The same wisdom appears in shamanic rituals, in Sufi trances, in deep prayer, all of them. Across cultures, discovered that holding the breath was not a limitation, but a doorway. That when the body stops breathing, it loses control and consciousness can go beyond. It can expand, dissolve, become everything. Breathing is not just biology. It is a secret language between the visible and the invisible. Each time you choose to pause it, you break a millennia-old pattern of submission. You reclaim a space of inner power that no one can give you, because it is already yours. The body does not need permission to transform. It only needs you to return the space the system has stolen from it, and that space is in the breath, in the pause, in that suspension that mimics death but awakens the most authentic life. Most people live without realizing this. They breathe without knowing it. They inhabit an automatic body, functional, trained to survive, not to feel. But a single moment of sustained attention is enough for everything to change. For the air that enters to become more than oxygen, to turn into energy, presence, inner fire. Those who have taken this practice to its extreme speak of a disorienting phenomenon. When breathing stops completely, thought dissolves as well. There is no more noise, no judgment, only naked, direct perception remains. Consciousness frees itself from the prison of the body and enters a dimension that cannot be named, only experienced. The ancients called it samadhi, shunya, mucked different names for the same rupture, the end of the self. This is not fantasy, not superstition. It is what happens when the body enters a state of absolute balance, when energy no longer scatters through the rhythm of breath, but condenses into a fixed point. That is where alchemy occurs. There, consciousness becomes pure presence. The self as you knew it collapses, and only what is real remains. Some practitioners claim that in this suspension they have perceived time stopping, space becoming irrelevant. It is an experience that cannot fit into language, because it is not reasoned, it is crossed, lived as revelation. There are no visions, no voices. There is something deeper, formless certainty, a peace that depends on nothing. A return to the origin. Applying this in daily life requires no retreats or complex rituals, only courage. The courage to sit in silence and stay with yourself. The discipline to observe your breath, to let it become subtler, slower, until it disappears for a few seconds. And in that disappearance, to observe what remains, what arises. There is your essence, what cannot be controlled or defined. The current system, with its frantic pace and logic of production, will never tell you this. Because a person connected to themselves cannot be easily controlled. They do not obey blindly. They do not chase the superficial. A person who has learned to inhabit the void no longer needs stimulation to feel alive. Their energy flows from within. From that fertile silence no one sees, but everything depends on. Breathing this way is not a luxury. It is an act of inner revolution. It is cutting dependence on external noise. It is reclaiming your time, your body, your truth. Because when the breath stops even for an instant, something happens that no one taught you. Awakening. Not the spiritual kind filled with pretty words, but the real one. The kind that destroys illusions, dismantles your mask, and leaves you face to face with what you always were, nameless, formless, just presence, just consciousness. If you felt the impact of this message, do not ignore it. Transformation begins in the silence of your breath. Subscribe, activate the bell, leave your comment, share the video, and explore more content that exposes what no one dares to say.